Hi guys, it's Lathan here. The other day, Eric July, founder and owner at the Rippaverse, inserted himself into an exchange on X to set a few things straight. What prompted him was that in this exchange a user by the name of Wouter van Putten was asking internet personality Andy Worski, "Where is Yaira, Andy?" In comes Eric July to helpfully clarify. Yaira ships this month when we said it would. Stoked to get it in the customer's hands. But Wouter was not entirely satisfied. It's 25 degrees here. That's 77 degrees Fahrenheit for you guys across the pond. So much for Yaira winter. I wish you good luck though with the campaign. I also wish you'd quit bashing crowdfunding, as that is basically what you're doing with Yaira. It was obvious to Eric at this stage that Wouter was clearly a confused individual, and he was happy to help. "Hey man, sorry for your confusion, but I'm glad to clarify. We said Yaira would launch in winter, it did. I've never bashed crowdfunding. Yaira isn't crowdfunded." While all three claims would be interesting to examine in detail, in this video I would like to focus on the first one. What Wouter is referring to with Yaira Winter is of course the way the Rippaverse has advertised their upcoming comic book, Yaira #1. Yaira appears to have some kind of ice powers, so while the book was still being finalized, it likely seemed expedient to make Yaira Winter a thing. Of course, the idea of any kind of winter beginning in the middle of March seems a little bit off, but we'll get back to that one later in this video. Before examining Eric's claim in detail, let's be mindful of the fact that Eric has a certain way with words. If you are new to Eric July, you may not know that he always plays these silly word games where he implies something while technically not actually saying it. At least not literally and explicitly. In this case, he is implying that Yaira isn't late by any reasonable measure, full stop. It was always supposed to ship at the end of May. The idea being that a casual observer who is unfamiliar with or doesn't care about the whole story might simply believe it and move on. And by the looks of it, it's working. Here we go again. There, I saved everyone having to sit through a cringe video when the campaign launched when it was promised to launch. Poor chap. Drank the Kool-Aid, it seems. Anyway, let's not be disheartened by these kind of remarks. Let's instead take note of what Eric isn't saying. He isn't saying, "We always said Yaira would merely launch in winter," or "Yaira Winter always referred to the launch of the pre-order campaign," or "We never actually promised a release in winter." He doesn't say these things because doing so would make him a liar. And Eric July is not a liar, he is merely dishonest. But let's look at an example. You may remember that last year the Rippaverse was threatened with a trademark lawsuit by ISOM, the International School of Ministry. In August of 2023, Eric posted a video addressing the issue. An organization was trolled into a baseless lawsuit. This is being resolved. Once you find out how we got to this point, you'll realize just how foul this is. This went beyond "it's just jokes." This was a legitimate attempt to destroy a business. But receipts are collected. The video is 9.5 minutes long, but instead of talking about the impending lawsuit or the International School of Ministry, he spends the majority of that time talking about Vito, Gisualdi, and Dick Masterson.
Good Shepherd is alleging that we have had unauthorized use of their trademark. Outside of the given context, most of what I'm about to say isn't even aimed at the people that filed the lawsuit. Let's set the scene. There's more than likely some reference to me before, but a fat person by the name of Vito really ramped up his public hatred of me at the launch of the Rippaverse last year. Since then, very frequently this person has made a point to speak negatively about me and this company. Oddly enough, his friend joined in.
In the same breath as commenting on Dick and Vito, he suggests that someone is working overtime to ruin his life and what he has built.
Could it be that someone is working overtime to attempt to ruin my life and what I've built? I mean, this was said in that video.
I'm an asshole for fun. I like it. If I can say I'm doing it for kids, it's just a socially acceptable way for me to act like a psychopath.
He also suggests that parties are using the state against him or are running op campaigns to maybe get someone else to do it for them.
Parties have shown that they have no problem either using the state against us themselves or running op campaigns to maybe push someone else to do it for them.
In the end, he talks to the camera directly, presumably addressing Dick and Vito, stating that receipts have been collected and that he will respond accordingly.
No longer am I playing around. Again, receipts have been collected, so deleting your posts, videos, and such won't do you any good. Just understand that we will be acting accordingly. It's what you wanted after all.
Any reasonable person will come away from this video believing that Eric suspects Dick and Vito to be behind the potential lawsuit in some capacity, that he has the receipts to back that up, and that he will be retaliating legally within short. But when he was on Nick Recator's stream a while later, he suddenly had no idea if Dick and Vito were involved. Let's watch a short clip, and while we do so, take a good look at Eric's face.
Did you accuse him of starting that lawsuit?
No.
Prior to him tweeting that?
No.
No?
No.
You didn't say that he and Vito were behind that?
No.
I think your timeline might be off on that one, brother.
No, I think your timeline might be off on that one because if you
Very
watch
well
my
could
video,
be.
I never make all I did was connect that specific email to them. You're making a claim that I explicitly stated that I wouldn't be so foolish as to do that.
So Dick and Vito didn't do this then?
I don't know.
You don't know now?
No, I don't know. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Potentially. Nonetheless,
You're gonna sit here. You're gonna sit here and honestly fucking say maybe now?
That's
like you don't know?
What did I you want to watch the video now, Nick? Because I never explicitly say that it is that was what it was that they did. What I will say is that, again, the guy that sent that goofy ass email that tried to, again, gay op his way into kind of a lawsuit, someone took credit for it nonetheless, and that's what specifically happened. That's what it is that I'm saying. I'm connecting them. There was nothing that I said in that regard that was not factual.
Now, I appreciate that this may be a lot to take in, so in case you want to review some of this in your own time, I will leave links to the original videos in the description below. Okay, so now we know that Eric is a big fan of not saying things explicitly. I never explicitly say that that was what it was that they did. Truer words have rarely ever been spoken. In other words, what he isn't saying is just as important as what he is saying. When he writes, "We said Yaira would launch in winter," he is absolutely correct. They did say so, for example, when they announced the pre-order campaign. Pre-orders go live on March 11th. No lies detected. Of course, the more observant among you might think that March 11th is perhaps cutting it a little bit close, and while meteorologically speaking, that date already falls into spring, the stars are a little bit more forgiving. Astronomically speaking, winter didn't end until March 19th. But, as we will also see, which definition of winter to use is entirely beside the point. Before we get there, however, let's take a look at something else that Eric is not explicitly saying. Here we have Eric stating, "We haven't delayed anything." The fulfillment date for Yaira has always been the same date. He is correct again. This response is in relation to the specific fulfillment date, which was only announced at campaign launch. So technically, that never got moved. So now that we've seen what Eric has said explicitly, and where there are convenient gaps in his statements, let's take a look at some of the other things the Rippaverse has said, officially and explicitly. An article was posted on December 1st of last year celebrating the official addition of Kanan White and the Soska sisters to the Rippaverse team. In that article, it is clearly written that Yaira number 1 will be released, not launched, during winter still. Kanan White, known for his outstanding work with Marvel and DC, as well as indie work, had been tasked with prominent pieces around the Rippaverse, including being revealed as the first announced cover artist for Yaira #1. The Soska sisters, known for their visceral and hard-hitting films, will be the writers for this anxiously anticipated anti-heroine whose first issue will be released this winter. Now, believe it or not, some people have actually argued that the launch of the pre-order campaign for Yaira #1 somehow constitutes a release of the comic book. While I personally believe that this is a rather unusual interpretation of the word, let's take a look at what some other people think. Anticipating that there would be some reinterpretation of the original announcement, I did a little poll back in March. If you can't actually get Yaira #1 yet, can we still say that it has been released? If we ignore respondents who didn't know what Yaira was and normalize the results, then an astounding 8.3% thought that yes, the launch of the pre-order campaign would indeed constitute a release. 22.3% of respondents told me to go home already. Incidentally, those same people are likely to downvote this video. So if you'd like to help me grow my channel, I would appreciate it if you could smack that like button. But I suppose you could argue that it was a small poll, that most of my followers are likely to be critical of Eric July, and that the results will therefore be biased. There is certainly some truth to that. So let's perhaps instead take a look at the dictionary and see how the word release is actually defined. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, it means to make available to the public, as in releasing a movie, or I guess in a similar fashion also a comic book. And if you can't actually watch that movie or get your hands on that comic book, it's not available to you. While we are here, what does it say about pre-orders? To pre-order something is to order something in advance, before it is available for sale, such as pre-ordering an upcoming new release. So clearly a pre-order and a release are not the same thing. I rest my case. Let's go back in time a bit and see if and how the release date has evolved over time. Back in May of 2023, an article was posted as part of the Rippaverse News, the latest and greatest. This article was describing the release schedule for 2023, and it included the following text. ISOM #2's campaign will be vital for our company because it will allow us to measure our capabilities. After ISOM #2's campaign, we'll spend a lot of time assessing the company's state and where we can improve. The first book we're announcing in May, we're pushing to get released in the fall of this year. This book would of course be Alpha Core, and it would be released on time. Fulfillment started on December 4th of last year, which meteorologists would already call winter, but let's not split hairs on that one. The second will be released, that is, sometime in the winter going into very early 2024. This is of course referring to Yaira #1. Also note the following passage. We will, if we can, move these books up, but that's just to play it safe and, again, not overcommit. As a new business, we need to remain adaptable and able to pivot as needs or hurdles present themselves. Remember that there's plenty of content in each book, as all of them are over 90 pages, with ISOM #2 being over 100. So at some point, the end of winter was considered to be the latest possible release date. It is absolutely a good idea to have a safety buffer in order not to overcommit. Nonetheless, that safety buffer got eaten up eventually. And as we will see, it got eaten up rapidly as well. On May 30th, everything was still well. So well, in fact, that the Rippaverse was confident that Yaira #1 would be released in 2023 still. 3 books were promised as part of our 2023 release slate. ISOM #2 was always going to be the next project. Then last week we teased the book that would follow Ill-Advised Part 2 with Alpha Core #1 this fall by the legendary Chuck Dixon. But what would come after that? If you follow us on our social media platforms and YouTube channel, then you saw yesterday's incredible Rippaverse news. The Twister twins, known as the Soska sisters, have joined the Rippaverse to write Yaira number 1. 2.5 months later, things were still seemingly on track. In a post entitled What We've Learned and What's Cookin', Yaira number 1 is declared to be almost complete. But let's get on to the creative things. As we entered the new warehouse, 2 books were being completed in addition to ISOM number 2. That's Alpha Core number 1 by the team-up of Chuck Dixon and Joe Bennett, and Yaira number 1 by the Soska sisters and Debora Carita. Outside of some minor edits, the art and colors for both books are complete. This is in August of 2023. Things were going so well apparently that Yaira number 2 was already starting pencils and ink. ISOM number 3 and the finale to the ill-advised arc is starting pencils and ink. Yaira number 2 by the Soskas also starts pencils and ink this month. Again, this would be followed by the article from December 1st, in which Yaira number 1 was still on track for a winter release. Another indication of the extent of the delays is the fulfillment start date and where it falls in relation to the campaign window itself. Eric has previously taken pride in launching his campaigns with a product already complete, and he certainly appears to have done so for both ISOM number 2 and Alpha Core. The ISOM number 2 campaign ended on August 27th of last year, but fulfillment started almost a full month before, on July 31st. The Alpha Core campaign ended on January 20th of this year, but fulfillment started well before then and in good time for Christmas on the 4th of December. Compare that to the Yaira campaign, which is set to end on May 25th, with fulfillment only expected to start the day after, on May 26th. All 3 campaigns have a duration of 2.5 months, so it really appears that Eric stretched out the release timeline to the maximum extent possible, while at least launching in winter and without having to lengthen his campaign window. This is further evidenced by the fact that print numbers were not yet disclosed at campaign launch. As it said on the campaign website, print numbers would be made public in late April, and indeed they were. It seemed like a way to suss out demand for printing at the time, which it certainly was, but it also makes a lot of sense given the overall delay in the finalization of the book. Sure enough, a few weeks later on May 18th, Eric proudly posted a picture of a box full of issues of Yaira number 1. Presumably, these had only just come in recently. Knowing all that, the following post by Eric from December 4th of last year reads a bit iffy. Launch with the product complete. We go the extra mile of having prints done prior to launching a pre-order, but that's not a requirement for a reasonable turnaround. He used the same post to criticize other creators, crowdfunders who, according to him, were causing delays in fulfillment largely due to being undisciplined and lacking respect for the customer. Now, I do want to make one thing very clear. Eric has not taken any money for Yaira before launching the pre-order campaign. That is a major distinction between his approach and typical crowdfunding campaigns. Some of those crowdfunding campaigns have indeed been late, and some of them still are. Probably the highest profile offender is this guy right here. Ethan Van Sciver, 31-year veteran of the comic book industry and creator of, among other things, Rainbow the Brute. Rainbow the Brute is a campaign that was launched in November of 2020 and has taken in an impressive $500,000 plus since then. But the estimated shipping date for this was all the way back in December of 2021. And even 2.5 years after that deadline, there is still no book. Ethan has apologized for this, both on Indiegogo as well as on his live streams. He has also committed to honoring any and all refund requests that might come in. However, since then his campaign updates have become less and less frequent, the latest one being more than 2 months old, and the campaign's comment section is full of seemingly unheard refund requests and frustrations about where to even contact Ethan. While he has responded to some of them, that seems to have been a statistical anomaly. Worse yet, individual people on X asking when the book will be done are now better informed than the backers. Ethan, for crying out loud. put this here. It's not hard. Keep posting updates. And while you're at it, you could also do something like this, where you post instructions for how to request a refund in the comments section. People need to know how to contact you. And then add more of these. It's a really bad look otherwise. Anyway, this video is about Eric and it's about Yaira. Why then, if Eric hasn't taken any money, is the Yaira delay so bad? Well, the only reason it's bad is because Eric is making it bad. To use Eric's own lingo, he has down-talked other creatives for being undisciplined, lacking respect, and not having a single business bone in their body when they suffer delays. Meanwhile, he is going through quite a hefty learning curve himself. One might be tempted to say that he doesn't have a creative bone in his body. He also got really attached to this Yaira winter thing. Arguably, it's been a promise to the fans, and of course, delays don't look good. But the icing on the cake is really the way he keeps gaslighting everyone about those delays. He keeps playing these stupid word games where he implies that Yaira simply isn't late, while technically never saying it. And as we will see, the gaslighting is not just happening with respect to the delays themselves, but also the likely reasons behind the delays. Let's get into it. On March the 2nd of 2024, Ethan Van Sciver, who is hosting a show called Trashcast on his YouTube channel, posted the following. I had to gently explain to my audience last night that although Miss Carita, the artist Eric July selected for his mammoth franchise Yaira, is a stunningly attractive young lady, she can't draw very well. I based this just on skimming her online portfolio. She draws better than most of the human race, but she's not where she needs to be to draw a comic book with a lot of light on it. Then someone reminded me of this preview page of Yaira from the back of ISOM number 2 and, woo, Eric is in big trouble. This is likely why Yaira has been delayed for so long. Kanan White is probably redrawing as much of it as he can before Eric's stupid and arbitrary winter deadline closes. Indeed, the preview pages were not particularly impressive. This is not good art. When the campaign finally launched, however, additional pages were released that looked nothing like the previews included at the end of ISOM number 2. This was lending credence to Ethan Van Sciver's theory that extensive redraws had been done and that other artists besides Debora Carita had their hand in the artwork. Initially, Eric July and the Rippaverse appeared to deny those allegations, though in typical Eric July fashion, much was left unsaid between the lines. Here he is responding to a fan who's writing, certain weirdos are now claiming that Joe Bennett and or Kanan White redrew the book. Can you put these rumors to rest because I think it's disrespectful to the hard work Debora put in? And instead of denying that redraws were taking place, Eric replies, neither of them are artists on this project. This is Debora's art. Of course, this begs the question, at what degree of doing redraws does a person become an artist on a project, and when does it cease to be Debora's art? This is clearly not addressing the underlying allegations. Or here he responds to a critic who's asking, come on dude, I can't believe that the art wasn't finished by someone else. There's no shame in admitting someone else did the finishes. It happens all the time in mainstream comics. That's what you hired Kanan White for, right? Eric denies this. Nope. Kanan is a director. He directs. If he was a penciler, he'd get credit as such. He absolutely has elevated all of the artists here, but he's not finishing anything in this book. Of course, nobody suggested that Kanan was an actual penciler on the project, and Eric only denies that Kanan specifically finished any of the drawings. At some point, people also noticed a resemblance between Debora's artwork and that of Joe Bennett. While Debora's preview pages from ISOM number 2 were distinctly underwhelming, her more recent pencils of Brian Solari looked remarkably similar to those done by Bennett for Alpha Core number 1. It should also be noted at this stage that both Carita and Bennett work for Glasshouse Graphics. Glasshouse is the full-service comic book studio that Eric has already been using for ISOM 1 and 2, as well as Alpha Core. While this is purely speculation on my part, it's likely that Eric's contract is not with Debora Carita directly, but with Glasshouse as the service provider. Depending on the terms of the contract, how Glasshouse decide to handle the work internally may be subject to some flexibility, even though the services are provided in Debora Carita's name. On March 16th, Eric posted a shout-out to Debora Carita, again seemingly denying any involvement of other artists. Shout out to Debora Carita. Apparently now she's so good that some can't believe it's her own work. This speaks to her professionalism and dedication to her craft. Shout out to Kanan White for elevating her through true leadership. As a thank you, here's some of Debora's pencils, that she did 100% herself. Of course, these particular pencils being done exclusively by Debora does not rule out other panels being done or modified by other artists. It might seem a little paranoid to question everything Eric says in this way, but really, these word games are so tiring, but once you see what Eric is doing, you really cannot view his claims any other way. This particular point was picked up on by Ethan Van Sciver, who did a shout-out of his own. In it, he requested further information on specific panels in which he believed he recognized Kanan's handwriting. Shout-out: can Eric show the pencils for this page, please, with emphasis paid to these particular panels? Mind you, at this point Eric was still extremely evasive as to whether there had been any redraws at all. But on March 18th, he posted yet another shout-out, this time to his art director Kanan White. I'd like to give a big shout-out to our art director Kanan White. He's an unbelievable artist, but his leadership has been invaluable. We brought him on to specifically be not simply an editor, but a teacher and mentor to all of our talent. There were several books in production when he arrived: Yaira, ISOM number 3, Bloodruth, etc. He combed through every bit of each book and communicated to the artists what should be corrected/redrawn and what could be added to improve the pages. He's unlocked new potential for Cliff, Joe, Debora, Michael and the rest. They all respect and value Kanan's input, and their additions and redraws are unbelievable. These books have been taken to the next level, and so have the artists. Yaira will be the first book you get to see Kanan's impact on, but his imprint is on every single book we release. Incredible artist and incredible dude. Finally, there was the official admission that there had indeed been redraws. Remember that at one point the Rippaverse seemed confident to ship Yaira in 2023 still, and that in August of 2023 the book was practically done. Given the delay of almost half a year, it seems the redraws initiated by Kanan White were extensive. After Eric's announcement, Ethan Van Sciver took credit for making Eric admit to redraws on his Trashcast show. He also called Eric a liar and insisted on Kanan having contributed to the artwork directly.
And the reason why this is a thing is because I said, show me the pencils to this page here. If there were no redraws, show me Debora's pencils. Not, show me the pencils to this. And I pointed out, like, this is the second page. This, not drawn by Debora. I mean, she might have done the rough layout here, but somebody drew this hand. Debora can't really draw hands. Somebody drew this face properly. Debora can't draw faces like this. And by the way, somebody pointed out, I think it was John Malin, the scritchy, scratchy kind of, cross-hatching underneath the chin is uniquely Kanan White. Right here. See the scritchy, scratchies underneath the chin? That's Kanan White. So, Eric is lying. Kanan White, sorry about this, boomerism. Kanan White actually touched the pages. So now we know, because Debora doesn't know how to do this. This is skill right here. See the super light. Debora might be able to do these kind of pull-outs. But this right down here, underneath the lip, the lower lip, and on the chin, this gray kind of fine hatching, that's Canaan White's work. He did that.
But did Eric really lie? We know by now that we have to handle anything that Eric says with the utmost suspicion. Take another one of his statements here, for example. This one was posted on the same day as the general admission that redraws had in fact taken place. It speaks to her professionalism and Canaan's impact. But any improvement on additions and redraws under the suggestions/corrections of Canaan or the other editors are attributed to Debora. You can give someone all the direction in the world, but she's the one that has to actually draw it. Again, we are not interested in whom those redraws or corrections are attributed to. We are interested in who is making them. I did, however, find one very suspicious statement from Eric that has me puzzled. He posted this before his public admission that redraws had taken place. First, we promised a winter launch. It launched in the winter. Okay, we've talked about that. Second, Canaan was brought on as our art director. His job is to elevate the artists. Debora is one of those artists. However, neither Canaan nor Joe Bennett have drawn on this book. Joe Bennett has nothing to do with our editorial process. Any redraw needed by the editors or director is handled by the original artist, in this case Debora. If I'm honest, I'm not sure what to do with this post. Is there some clever word game that I'm not seeing? Is there some smart workaround where Canaan and Bennett are providing Debora with a digital version of their corrections that she then draws over or incorporates into her own work? Or did Debora in fact improve that much as an artist within a time span of just 6 months that she is not only able to produce better quality herself, but can even imitate other artists such as Joe Bennett and Canaan White? Of course, there remains a distinct possibility that Eric didn't actually know about the details and extent of the redraws. After all, he's a businessman, and he didn't seem to be aware of the usage of 3D assets in ISOM 1 and 2. Is it possible he merely told Canaan and Glasshouse to fix the art and they did without telling him how? Whatever the case may turn out to be, I think what gets me most is that Eric could have sold all of this as a win. It is clear that Canaan is an extremely competent artist. No doubt his skill and experience are a major asset to the Rippaverse. If the decision was made to let him help improve the quality of all of the Rippaverse's artwork, why not simply say so right after he got hired? Eric could simply have announced that Canaan, being the competent and experienced art director that he is, has identified a number of improvement areas within the Rippaverse. The decision has been made to push Yaira back a few months in order to make sure that it meets the high standards that Canaan and the Rippaverse have set for their products. After all, the customer deserves nothing less than top-notch quality. Yaira is unfortunately unable to join us this winter, but she will definitely help us keep cool in the coming summer. But what do you think? Is Yaira late, or did she make it just in time? Is Eric a liar, or just smarter than all of us? And who is actually doing those redraws and corrections? Could it really be 100% Debora Carita's artwork? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please help my channel grow by leaving a like. Also, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with others. Thank you very much, and see you next time.